Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Black Coats, written by Yellow Clad.
We never should have taken that human,
Gretblar hissed through his teeth, earning him a smack upside the head from one of his peers.
Quiet. One more complaint out of you and I'll skin you alive,
Clep muttered, yet we all heard the fear in his voice. The job had been pulled off to perfection. The daughter of a wealthy human CEO had been kidnapped by their competitors in the Illuriate Commerce Guild, and now said daughter was tied up and wriggling between the three gangsters that had been tasked with guarding her. The others, with some 50-odd individuals, were presently milling around outside the holding area where the hostage was being kept. Since their escape with package in hand, things had gotten progressively worse and worse. Needless to say, the authorities had been immediately notified, security footage inspected, and rather quickly, they'd been cornered in their lair. At this moment, every street and access point in the swarming with police. There was no way, in or out, that didn't have view under the watchful gaze.
It's just saying, everything's gotten real bad since we grabbed her. How important can she be to get this sort of a response?
Gritblar murmured, and they all looked down at the wriggling human who was no older than 18. This human probably looked back at them with nothing but anger and indignation in her blue eyes. She was also trying to speak, but they all knew it would be nothing but a string of vile insults and obscenities that could probably peel fresh paint.
At least we don't have to deal with one of them
the youngest of the trio started to say, before his snout was forcefully shut by two others, each of them bearing a panicked look on their faces.
Don't you dare speak of them. Do you want us all dead?
Clep hissed, and they heard a muffled giggle from their captive. Clep was about to reprimand her with a good kick to the stomach when they heard the somewhat muffled voice of whoever was in charge of the police response outside. They all strained to hear, but couldn't make anything out. It didn't matter. If the police were going to try and get inside, then they'd have a dead hostage on their hands. That is, unless they sent a black coat. But surely the spoiled heiress wouldn't be worth that sort of response, right? Wrong. Outside their little safe room, something happened, and this time they all heard what it was.
Well, looks like you're not our problem anymore. Sucks to be you.
What could that mean? Nobody knew, but the lookouts noted that the police were backing off, but maintaining a perimeter still. Something had them spooked, and nobody knew what. And then the power went out. Doors locked automatically, and the ventilation spluttered to a halt. Murmurs of discontent and worry were easily heard through the walls, now thanks to the eerie silence. Gretblar jumped when the hostage squirmed and seemingly started to laugh behind her gag. And when she spoke, muffled as it was, they all knew what she was saying. They're coming. On the top floor, an improperly barricaded skylight suddenly shattered inwards, a black streak falling through it and landing upon one of the hostage takers. A hidden plasma blade sliding from the sleeve of a midnight black coat and sinking deep into the carapace covering the back of the alien's neck. The three other criminals in the room barely had time to react before they were dispatched with a whisper of exhalation of air and gases, the silenced pistol doing its work. On the bottom floor, a sentry was pulled from his position, his cries muffled by a gloved hand as another plasma blade sliced clean through his throat. The body was dragged away into the shadows. A tall figure moved through the gloom with an assured ease, each step barely louder than a whisper, though they walked in a manner most would consider to be normal. One by one, the room would be cleared quietly and efficiently, the two intruders practically untouchable as they left behind a trail of clean kills. Pretty soon, it was clear their lair had been breached, and that was a problem indeed. The door to the hostage room was shouldered open, and the ringleader stepping inside with a terrified expression on his scaly face. "Gizri, get the hostage out of here this instant," he said, and the three blinked in surprise.
But boss, there's now—
"Get her out of here this instant! I don't care, just do it!" The boss roared, and they scrambled to do as he commanded. Clep hoisted the heiress over her shoulder, much to her chagrin.
I think I know a way. Hopefully the cops didn't block it off,
Gretler said, and so they followed them through the rooms not yet breached by whatever was attacking them. It didn't take them long to reach the exit that wasn't compromised and peered out at the street. No sniper would have good sightline on their path. Gretler knew, and so their destination would be easy to reach so long as the cops weren't watching it. But it was worth the risk, better than staying and running into whatever was coming for the hostage. If the hostage was even the target, who knew? Maybe if they had stayed, even the hostage would have been killed. Just as they stepped outside, they heard the fighting escalate in severity within the area. The unknown assailants discarding stealth for sheer fear factor. Explosions, gunshots, and screams echoed out of the building. And though the three who had managed to escape could not see it, even the police looked a bit green around the gills. Some rather literally. The trio, plus living cargo, managed to make it to the not-really-secret escape route, which turned out to be a sewer access point. As all of them, save Gretler, groaned at the thought of going down into the stinky sewers, the large alien gripped the grating and lifted it up, taking the hostage off Klepp's shoulder and holding onto her while they climbed down. Carefully, she was lowered in after him, and then the other two followed. It was surprisingly not stinky down here, even though there were plenty of water rushing by only a few feet from the walls in the special channel. Quick study revealed that there was some sort of shield barrier in place that didn't do anything about the sound, but kept the water and its potent stench at bay. Nice.
All right, follow me. If we do this right, the tunnels should lead us straight to the spaceport. Then we can get out of here without anyone noticing,
Gretler said, and finally the most silent of them all spoke. And what about the people who hired us? Won't they, Peepo asked, and Klepp nodded. Yeah, they will, but we can worry about that once we're away from this place, he said, and that was good enough for the rest of them. Well, not so much for the heiress, who started to struggle and complain more. On the surface, the last of the kidnappers had been dealt with. The ringleader held a full foot off the ground by one of the assailants. Come on, criminal leadership identified and apprehended. Please advise. They spoke, the voice heavily modulated and sinister as it was piped through the faceless helmet they wore. All the ringleaders could see was himself reflected in the full-face visor. He couldn't hear the response from the thing's handler, but it was a more favorable response at the least. Understood. We'll prepare him for exfil. The black coat dropped the ringleader, who promptly gasped for air before he flipped over onto his stomach, arms placed behind his back where they were cuffed. Quickly, a mask was placed against his face, sedative gas pumped through it, and he was out for the count. The black coat, a male from the looks of it, straightened and turned to where the companion appeared, the one slightly shorter and thinner. This place is empty. The hostage isn't here. Relocated? Affirmative. They can't have gotten far. And with that, two black coats turned from the ringleader and headed for the back door, as it was the only entrance neither of them had used. Below, the trio continued on, though Gretler was growing more and more agitated, muttering to himself.
Something isn't right here. I could have sworn there was a turn-off right here that saved some time off the trip,
he said aloud. Klepp and Peepo glancing at one another before Klepp jogged up to walk at Gretler's side. What's going on? He asked, and Gretler shot him a look.
The layout's all wrong, like there shouldn't be a wall there.
He pointed towards what he was talking about. What looked to be a turn-off ended abruptly, though the water seemed to flow through the small opening, one too small for any of them to safely make it through.
And there's just no reason for a wall to be there either. None of them look even new. It's like they've always been there when they haven't,
he said, clearly distressed. Klepp patted him on the shoulder. Well, let's keep leading the way. We don't have time to figure this out, right, Peepo? He spoke and turned at the same time, only to find Peepo wasn't behind them anymore. Peepo, where are you? Answer me, damn it. And yet the answer he got was the sound of water and refuse flowing along peacefully. Fear spiked through both of them, while the human they transported practically flew into a fit of hysterical, but still muffled laughter, with accompanying wiggling. She was promptly smacked on the back of the head, and she went limp. Let's keep moving, quickly, Klepp said, and Gretler nodded, panic in his eyes as they started to dash through the winding tunnels that seemed far less safe than it had before. They ran and ran for what felt like hours, days even, and then Clep slipped, smacking into the shield over the water and feeling a sudden tingle run through his spine before his vision went dark. It was only dark for a moment, but when it returned, he went looking for Greppler. He was nowhere to be found. "Greppler! Greppler!" he called out, his voice echoing through the tunnels. This really wasn't good. Had he lost his nerve and simply dashed on ahead, or had something happened to him? He wasn't sure, nor did he really care at that moment as he caught the sound of incoming footsteps from the path he'd just walked. Scrambling to his feet and quickly checking on the health of the hostage, he began to run again, slipping now and then, but thankfully not falling. Every turn felt like it brought him right back to where they'd started, and that wasn't good at all. And then he made a wrong turn, or at least it had seemed like a wrong turn at the time, but instead he found himself staring at a wall and no way out. He turned to backtrack, but instead found the way blocked by one thing that had never wanted to see. Black coats, the boogeyman of elder humanity, the gift that kept on killing. Just one of them was enough to destabilize the tyrannical government, eradicate terror cells, or make a pirate lord simply vanish. They had stopped wars before they started, all with the precise application of knife or bullet. Unstoppable, unkillable, and everywhere. Seen, yet unseen. And now two of them blocked his path to freedom. Panic caused him to pull some pistol he carried from a holster in which it sat, placing it against the temple of the unconscious human he carried. "Stay back! I'm warning you, I'll kill her if I have to," he yelled, his voice crackling. Instead of trying to placate him and get him to calm down, he just stood there, staring at him or the gun he couldn't quite tell. Not with those featureless faceplates, that is. So focused on the two before him that he didn't hear the soft fizzle of a hologram falling behind him, nor the sound of a gun clearing leather, till the barrel was pressed against the back of his head. Clep went stiff, his eyes widening and the gun in his hand trembling. A gloved hand settled on his free shoulder, and from the corner of his eye he could see the faceless helmet of another black coat lean in close. "Drop the gun and set the girl down slowly and carefully," the heavily distorted voice spoke, no louder than a whisper. Clep was no idiot, and even in a state of panic he knew there was no escaping this. So, as he was told, the gun fell from his fingers and clattered to the ground, and he slowly turned to set the hostage down against the wall, making sure that she was propped up comfortably. The smaller of the three black coats moved up and knelt beside the hostage, waving a palm over her before looking up. "Alive, just unconscious?" "Good." The one behind Clep returned his focus to Clep. "Now, run." It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. Clep bolted and found that all the tunnels which had been blocked off were now open. But which way had he come from? He didn't know, and so he picked a random course and struck to it. The three humans watched him go before they scooped up the unconscious girl and walked away, fading into the shadows. Later, when the heiress awoke, she found herself in a private room and locked in, much to her displeasure. But the style of the room was decidedly human, and so she felt mostly at ease. Meanwhile, the three humans discussed what they had found. "What did you learn from the ringleader?" the one from the sewers asked, and the large one at first to clear his throat. "It was as we suspected. The girl was taken in order to get her father to do as the kidnappers wanted. However, those that actually did the kidnapping were just pawns for a larger cell, completely unaware of what they could have helped come about in the future. That said, we have a location now for the real mastermind. We can deploy immediately." "Negative. Your job is to return the girl to her family. I'll handle the rest of it myself. Objections?" The other two shook their heads, and so the more senior of the trio nodded and stood, before slipping away towards his personal craft. 5 minutes later, the two starships, each sleek and painted a light-absorbing black, parted ways, each with their own mission. A day later, on a backwater planet, Vosi Z-690, the true benefactors of the kidnapping discussed their options.
"We have no word about the girl. What are we going to do?" one said.
"Well, we'll figure something out. There's more than one way to get her dear old dad in our pockets. We just have to find it." We'll get those weapons eventually, another said, before their attention was drawn to the Hollowford, where the dad in question was giving a speech. They ignored most of it, but when his daughter stepped into view and they saw her escorts, they all froze. Even through the Hollowford, it felt as though the two humans in black were staring right at them, and they finally started to really pay attention to what the girl's father had to say. Thanks to the safe return of my daughter, I can finally rest easy, knowing that her kidnappers have been brought to justice, and that those who orchestrated the entire thing will soon meet the same fate. A shiver ran down their spine, for just as the hollow winked out, their comms squawked to life. This is the East Lookout, black coat, black coat! And with those words, the hope drained from them all. Outside the mountain hideout, a single human strode over the rocky terrain, gaze transfixed on the cave entrance around which camo and hollow netting was arrayed. Command, target acquired. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, Henry the Red, Caspar Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon WRE, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.